Cara Nolan's left heel snapped the moment she stepped into the marble lobby of Halsten Tower, and the universe clearly wanted her to suffer. Papers flew everywhere, her portfolio, resumes, mock-ups, and reference letters scattered like confetti across the gleaming floor. She dropped to her knees with a gasp, her tote bag sliding off her shoulder as people stepped around her like she was invisible. "Great. Just great," Cara muttered, her heart pounding like a drumline. She had exactly 6 minutes until her interview on the 30th floor. Her only shot at landing a marketing assistant job at one of the most prestigious firms in Manhattan, and now she looked like a disaster. A pair of tan leather shoes stopped in front of her. "Are you okay?" a deep voice asked. She looked up and her breath caught. The man crouching beside her looked like he'd just stepped out of a GQ magazine. Dark hair, sharp jaw, navy suit tailored to perfection, and warm brown eyes that studied her with concern. "I'm fine," she said quickly, reaching for her papers. My heel broke and then everything just ugh." He was already scooping up her pages, moving fast, neat little stacks appearing in his hands. "You're bleeding." "What?" She looked down, a scrape on her palm. She hadn't even noticed. "Don't worry," he said, pulling a crisp white handkerchief from his inside pocket. "Here," she blinked. "You carry a handkerchief?" "I carry a lot of things," he said with a half grin, pressing it into her hand. "Let me help you up." He stood and offered his hand. She hesitated only a second before gripping it. His hand was warm, strong. He pulled her to her feet like she weighed nothing. "I'm Cara," she said, suddenly aware of how ridiculous she probably looked, sweaty, wind-blown, one heel broken, blood on her hand. "Victor," he said, his voice smooth. "Victor Fairbanks," her breath caught again. "Fairbanks? As in Fairbanks Capital? No way. He wouldn't be walking around picking up strangers' papers on the lobby floor." "I've got it from here," she said quickly, stacking the papers into her tote. "You're heading up to Sterling and Branch," she blinked. "How did you?" He motioned to the top page of her resume. "Your folder's open." "Oh," her cheeks burned. "Yeah, I have an interview." His eyes scanned her face. "You'll be late if you try to walk in those." She looked down at her broken heel, then back up. "Yeah, I'm hoping they'll pity me," he chuckled, and it was low and warm and did something ridiculous to her stomach. "Or, you could let me help." He turned toward the concierge desk. "Thomas, call up to 30. Tell them Miss Nolan had a minor fall, but she's on her way." The concierge nodded immediately. Cara stared. "Wait, how did you?" "I own the building," Victor said simply, turning back to her. "And I know the CEO of Sterling and Branch." "You're not missing this interview," she blinked. "You own Halsten Tower," he nodded. "Among other things." "Oh my God," she whispered. He smiled like he was used to that reaction but didn't particularly like it. "Let me walk you up." I can't let you do that." "Why not?" His tone was easy, like he wasn't the most powerful man in the room. "Because you're Victor Fairbanks. And you're Cara Nolan. Come on," he said, gesturing toward the elevators. "I'll make sure you get there." They stepped into the private express elevator. He swiped a black card and the doors closed behind them. It was silent, except for the soft hum of the rising floors. "You're overqualified for an assistant job," he said, glancing at her resume again. "Why are you applying for this?" She hesitated. "Because I need the job, doesn't matter what it is." He handed her back the folder. "You're brave showing up like this." "Brave or desperate," she muttered. He looked at her for a moment. "I like brave." The elevator dinged, floor 30. She stepped out into the waiting area, nerves rushing back in. Before the doors shut again, Victor said, "Good luck, Cara." She turned back. "Thanks for everything," he nodded once. The doors slid closed. Cara didn't get the job. She made it to the second round, but they ended up hiring someone with more agency experience. She was walking out of the building 2 days later, heels intact this time, when a voice called her name. "Cara." She turned and froze. Victor Fairbanks stood beside a sleek black Maserati parked at the curb, sunglasses pushed back in his thick dark hair. He looked even more ridiculously attractive than she remembered. "Oh, hi," she said, hugging her folder tight. "I heard about the job." "Of course you did." she smiled, trying to sound breezy. "No worries, I'll find something else. Come have lunch with me." "I what?" "There's a place around the corner. They do truffle fries that'll make you forget about failed interviews." She looked at him like he was joking. "You want to have lunch with me? Why not?" he said again, that same easy tone. "You're interesting." "I'm a mess," he grinned. "I like messes." The restaurant was quiet, upscale, white marble everything. The waiter greeted Victor by name. Kara felt completely underdressed in her thrifted pencil skirt and blouse, but Victor didn't seem to notice. They talked over steak salads and fries. She told him about growing up in Jersey, working 3 jobs through college, her dream of becoming a creative director one day. He told her, not much, but he listened, closely, like every word out of her mouth mattered. "You're not like I expected," she said at one point, dipping a fry in aioli. He raised a brow. "What did you expect? Cold, arrogant, distant? You're not that." He looked at her for a long moment. "You're not what I expected either." Later, when they stepped back onto the sidewalk, he reached into his jacket and pulled out a small black box. She blinked. "What's that?" He handed it to her. "For your trouble the other day." She opened it and gasped. A pair of nude Laubautin heels sat inside. "I can't accept this," she said quickly, trying to hand it back. "You can," he said gently. "And you should. Victor, these are like $1,000. $850, he said calmly. "And worth every penny if you wear them to your next interview." She looked up at him, completely overwhelmed. "Why are you doing this?" He looked at her like the question surprised him. "Because I want to." That night, she couldn't stop thinking about him, his eyes, his voice, the way he looked at her like she was the only person in the room, and somewhere, deep in her chest, something started to shift. She didn't know it yet, but she was already falling. Kara tightened the belt on her coat as she stepped out of the subway, the wind whipping off the Hudson with the sting of early spring. She hadn't heard from Victor Fairbanks since their unexpected lunch 4 days ago, and she told herself that was a good thing. Men like that didn't circle back. They dropped in, dazzled you with charm and money, then vanished into their black cars and penthouses. Still, her phone sat heavy in her pocket. Silent. She shoved the thought aside and focused on the building across the street, an art gallery in Chelsea with a "Help Wanted" sign taped to the window. It wasn't marketing, but it was something. Rent wasn't going to pay itself. Inside, the gallery was quiet, all white walls and dramatic lighting. A woman in her 60s with silver-streaked hair looked Kara up and down before nodding once. "You're here about the assistant position." "Yes," Kara said, handing over her resume. "I have experience in visual campaigns and digital. I don't care about digital." The woman waved her off. "Can you organize invoices and not touch the sculptures?" Kara hesitated. "Yes." "Good, start Monday." Just like that, she left with a small smile. It wasn't glamorous, but it was a step. The kind of step you took when no one opened the door for you. 3 blocks away, she spotted the Maserati. Her feet stopped. It was parked in front of a cafe, sleek and unmistakable. And through the wide window, she saw him. Victor sat at a corner table, a newspaper folded in front of him, black coffee untouched. He wasn't alone. A tall woman with straight auburn hair leaned in, laughing at something he said. Her hand touched his arm. Kara turned before she could think. Her breath caught mid-step. "Don't be ridiculous," she muttered to herself as she walked away. "You had one lunch. People eat lunch." "Doesn't mean anything." She didn't look back. The next morning, a package showed up at her apartment. No note, no return address. Inside was a leather-bound portfolio, sleek, modern, expensive-looking. Her initials were embossed in the corner in gold. Beneath it lay a slim business card. "You're not invisible." V. She sat on the edge of her couch, staring at the card like it might explode. The last time someone sent her anything, it was a rejection email. Now a man who practically owned half of Manhattan was giving her monogrammed gifts. She should be flattered, she should be cautious, she should definitely not call him, but she did. The phone rang once. "Hello," his voice sent a strange flutter through her ribs. "You sent me something." "I did." I know. Then why?" "Because I wanted to." There was a pause. I saw you yesterday, she said finally, her voice quieter now, at the cafe. I know you did, Kara blinked. You saw me. You looked like you were running from something. I wasn't. Then don't run now, she hesitated. Who was she? A friend. She's married to my lawyer, and she talks too much, Kara exhaled, unsure why that mattered so much. I started a new job, she said, changing the subject. Good. It's not exactly what I want, but it's a paycheck. Send me the address. What? I'll pick you up after your first day. That's not necessary. I didn't ask if it was. She should have told him no, she didn't. Monday came faster than expected. She spent the day unpacking crates of abstract sculptures and alphabetizing invoices for pieces worth more than her student loans. The gallery owner barked instructions, and Kara kept her head down, her new portfolio tucked in her bag like a secret. At 5, the bell on the gallery door rang. She looked up and froze. Victor stood in the doorway, wearing a camel wool coat over a navy turtleneck, casual and elegant like he belonged on a magazine cover. Every head in the gallery turned. He walked straight to her. You said 5, he said simply. I didn't send you the address. You did. You just don't remember. She opened her mouth to argue, then stopped. She had. Somewhere between sleep and self-doubt the night before, I'm not dressed for wherever you're going, she warned. I didn't say we were going anywhere. He held the door open. Outside, the Maserati gleamed against the curb. This time, he opened the passenger side for her. They drove in silence for a few blocks, the city buzzing around them. Where are we going? She asked finally. I have a place in Tribeca. Her fingers tightened around her coat. Victor. I'm not trying to impress you. Could have fooled me. He glanced sideways. You don't impress easily, do you? Not anymore. The car turned onto a cobblestone street lined with converted warehouses. Victor pulled into an underground garage and parked beside a vintage Aston Martin. The elevator led to a private floor. When the doors opened, Kara stepped into a space that looked like something out of a design catalog. Floor-to-ceiling windows, exposed brick, a grand piano in the corner. The skyline glittered beyond the glass like something out of a dream. She turned slowly. You live here, I sleep here. That's not the same thing, no, he said. It's not. He walked past her, shrugging off his coat. She noticed then the way the space didn't feel lived in. No clutter. No photos, no warmth. You don't really bring people here, do you? She asked. He paused at the kitchen island. No, so why me? He looked at her for a long moment. You walked into my building like a hurricane, he said. And you didn't pretend to be impressed. I was bleeding. You were honest, she crossed her arms. That's not very romantic. I'm not trying to be romantic. She tilted her head. Then what are you trying to be? His eyes didn't leave hers as he said, real. Something in her chest shifted again. He opened a bottle of wine, poured 2 glasses, handed her one. I don't collect people, he said. I don't chase them. And I don't make time for things that don't matter. Then why am I here? Because you're not a thing. She sipped the wine, her fingers trembling slightly around the glass. He leaned against the counter, watching her. You're not like anyone I've ever met, she said. That's mutual. I don't know what this is. You don't have to. Silence stretched, then softer. I don't want to be someone you just give things to. I'm not giving you anything, he said. I'm asking if you'll let me stay where, in your life. Even if just for a little while. She looked down at her glass, then up at the man who had walked into her life like a perfectly timed accident, and for the first time in a long time, she said yes. Kara leaned against the balcony railing of Victor's penthouse, the wind rustling her hair as she stared out at the darkened skyline. She hadn't said much since they'd finished dinner, something he cooked himself, surprisingly well, though she hadn't commented on it. The meal had been quiet, unhurried, full of pauses that didn't feel awkward, just uncertain. Like they were both standing at the edge of something and unsure who would move first. He stepped beside her, 2 mugs in his hands. The scent of mint and something herbal drifted up as he offered her one. Chamomile, he said. Didn't think you'd want anything stronger. She took the cup, her fingers brushing his. You cook, you make tea, you own half the city. What don't you do? "I don't sleep much," he said, his tone dry. "Not anymore." She turned to face him, the city lights painting his jawline in soft gold. "Is that supposed to be mysterious?" "No," he said. "It's just the truth." The silence stretched again, but this time it vibrated with something else, an honesty neither of them had the words for yet. "I don't know what I'm doing," she said finally. He didn't look surprised. "Neither do I. I'm used to people who want something from me, or who think I want something from them." "Do you?" Her eyes met his. "Not from you, not like that." He studied her, his gaze quiet and unreadable. "Then what do you want?" "I want to stop feeling like I'm 5 steps behind everyone else, like I missed the memo on how to make things work." Victor didn't speak for a moment. Then he said, "My mother used to say the people who look like they have everything figured out are usually the ones hiding the most." She blinked. "What happened to her?" "She died when I was 19. Breast cancer." She didn't tell anyone how bad it was until it was too late. Kara's breath caught. "I'm sorry." "She was the only person who ever told me to slow down. Everyone else pushed me to go faster, make more, win everything." Sounds lonely. It was. She looked down into her tea. "My dad left when I was 8, said he'd be back after the holidays. He never made it past New Year's." Victor's voice was low. "Did you ever hear from him again?" "He sent a postcard once, from Miami. I was 13. It had a flamingo wearing sunglasses." Something in Victor's jaw shifted, but he didn't try to find the right thing to say. He just nodded. "I think that's why I hate asking for help," she said. "Because the people who were supposed to show up didn't." "I'm not going anywhere, Kara." She glanced up. "Don't say that unless you mean it." "I wouldn't say it if I didn't." The weight of his words settled between them, not heavy but solid, real. She looked away, back to the skyline. "What are we doing, Victor?" "I don't know yet," he said, "but I know I don't want to stop." The wind picked up and she wrapped her arms around herself. "Come inside," he said. "It's too cold out here." She followed him back in, the door sliding shut behind them. The room was quiet except for the distant hum of traffic below. She sat on the wide leather couch, pulling her knees up under her. He didn't sit beside her, not right away. Instead, he moved to the shelves near the window, pulling down something small and glass. "Do you like chess?" he asked. She blinked. "I haven't played since high school." He set the board between them. "Then I've got a chance." They played in silence for a few minutes, pieces clicking softly against the board. She moved like someone who thought too much. He moved like someone who didn't need to think at all. "You're going to win," she said after her third blunder. "Probably," he said. "But that's not the point." "Then what is?" He looked up, his eyes steady. "Spending time with you." A beat passed. Then another. She reached out and knocked over her own king. "I forfeit." He laughed, the sound low and warm. "You didn't have to give up so easily." "I didn't," she said, standing. "I just want to leave on a high note." He rose to meet her, and for a moment they stood inches apart, the air between them charged and fragile. "Victor," she said, her voice softer now, "I don't know how to do this with someone like you. Someone like me, someone who could have anyone, who lives in a world I don't understand." He stepped closer. "I don't want anyone else." She didn't answer. Instead, she reached up and touched the edge of his collar, her fingers brushing the fabric like she was trying to understand how he could be real. "I should go," she said. "I'll drive you." "No," she said. "I need to be alone tonight." He didn't argue, he simply nodded. She turned to leave, then paused at the elevator. "You're different than I expected," she said. "So are you." The doors closed between them. 3 days passed. She didn't hear from him, but he didn't disappear. A book showed up at the gallery her second day there. A rare marketing text she'd been trying to find for months. No note. Nothing but a small sticker inside the cover with her initials embossed in the corner. She spent that night reading it cover to cover. By the 4th day, she caught herself watching the door. By the 5th, she didn't wait. She walked out after her shift, heart pounding, pulled her coat tighter and headed straight for Halsten Tower. The lobby was quiet this time. No papers, no broken heels. Just her. She stepped into the express elevator and pressed the top floor. When the doors opened, she expected to find an assistant, maybe a security guard. She didn't expect Victor. He stood in the center of a vast office, floor-to-ceiling glass giving way to a view of the Empire State Building. His sleeves were rolled up, tie loose, hair slightly mussed like he'd been running his hand through it all afternoon. He looked up, startled, then relief. "I didn't call," she said. "I didn't expect you to." "I don't know what I'm doing here." He stepped around the desk. "Yes, you do." "No, you're here because you want to be," she swallowed. "I'm scared. So am I." She crossed the room slowly, her footsteps echoing on the marble floor. When she reached him, she stopped. "I don't want to be another thing you collect," she said. "You're not," he said. "You're the exception." She reached up and touched his face, her palm warm against his skin. "Then prove it." He didn't hesitate. His lips found hers like a promise, sure and unhurried, and everything else fell away. The city outside, the hours between them, the walls she'd built. The doubts he carried, they all dissolved in the space between one heartbeat and the next. When they finally pulled apart, neither of them spoke. They didn't need to. The invitation arrived late in the afternoon, delivered by hand to the gallery. A cream envelope with her name written in clean, unmistakable handwriting. Inside, a single card with gold foil edges. "Tonight. 7. Dress code. Whatever makes you feel like yourself." Kara stared at it for a long moment, the hum of the gallery's overhead lights suddenly louder than usual. The gallery owner glanced up from her paperwork, but said nothing. Kara tucked the card into her coat pocket and tried to keep her hands steady the rest of the day. She didn't own anything extravagant. Her wardrobe still clung to practicality, the kind that came from years of budgeting and walking everywhere. But when she stepped in front of her mirror that evening, she didn't reach for borrowed glamour. Instead, she chose a navy wrap dress she'd found months ago at a consignment shop. It fit her like it had been waiting for her. By 6:55, she stood at the curb outside her building, unsure if she was insane. A town car pulled up. Black, sleek, and quiet. The driver stepped out and opened the door. "Miss Nolan," she nodded, heart thudding. Inside, the car smelled faintly of cedar and something citrus. A small screen in the back played soft, classical music, and a chilled bottle of water sat in the cup holder. The driver didn't speak. He didn't need to. The route was already clear. They pulled into a gated courtyard somewhere downtown, tall hedges and iron lanterns lining the path. The building wasn't a skyscraper, it was older, with ivy on the brick and arched windows. It looked like a place that had stories hidden in its walls. She was led inside through a quiet hallway and into a glass conservatory. Victor stood there in a charcoal suit, no tie, his collar open, sleeves unbuttoned at the wrist. He turned the moment she stepped in. For a second, neither of them moved. Then he crossed the room in 3 strides. "I wasn't sure you'd come," he said. "I wasn't either," she replied. "But here I am." He reached for her hand and brought it to his lips. The gesture was old-fashioned in the most unexpected way. She didn't pull back. "What is this place?" she asked, glancing around. The conservatory ceiling arched high above them, strings of lights woven through the beams. Candles flickered on a long table set for 2, and a single cello played from an unseen corner. "My mother used to bring me here," he said. "It wasn't always like this. It used to be a greenhouse." She said it was the only place in the city that made her forget how fast everything moved. Kara's chest tightened. "You had it restored last year. I haven't brought anyone here since." She looked at him carefully. Why now? He didn't answer right away. Instead, he led her to the table, pulled out her chair, and waited until she was seated before taking his own. The meal was quiet but not strained. Each course arrived like part of a story, simple, fresh, and thoughtful. He watched her more than he ate, and every now and then their knees brushed under the table in a way that made her pulse rise. By dessert, she set her fork down and leaned forward. "You're trying very hard not to say something," she said. Victor's jaw shifted. "I've built my entire life on control, on not giving away more than I need to. And that doesn't work with you." He reached into his jacket and pulled out a folded sheet of paper. "This was slipped under my office door this morning." Kara took it, frowning. It was a printed email, unsigned. Her name was circled in red ink. She scanned it, her stomach turning as she read. She's an opportunist. She's been asking around about your finances. Don't be stupid, Victor. She's beneath you. Her fingers tightened. Who sent this? I don't know. But I have my suspicions. She looked up. And you're showing me this because I trust you. And because I want you to see what people who know me are willing to say when they think I'm not paying attention. Kara sat back in her chair, the paper trembling slightly in her hands. I didn't ask for any of this, she said. I know you didn't. I never wanted your money, Victor. I know that too. Then why does it feel like someone's waiting for me to prove them right? Victor's voice was low and steady. Because people are afraid of anything that doesn't fit their idea of control. You don't fit. And that's exactly why I want you here. Something cracked open in her chest at those words. She stood slowly, folding the note and setting it beside her untouched dessert. I don't care what they think, she said. But I do care what this becomes, because I've spent enough of my life being overlooked. I won't let myself be treated like a secret. Victor stood too, the distance between them vanishing. You're not a secret. You're the first thing in years that's felt real. Then, as if the moment demanded it, he pulled a small velvet box from his coat pocket, her breath caught. I'm not proposing, he said quickly, opening it. Inside sat a silver key to the conservatory, he said. And the apartment. And the office, and anywhere else you ever need to be, she stared at it. Why are you giving me this? Because I don't want to be in a world you're not part of, and because I'm done pretending I don't need anyone. Kara reached out and closed the box. You make everything feel larger than life, she said. But I need to know that when it gets quiet, when it's just us, it still matters. Victor stepped in, his voice low. Then let it get quiet. Their lips met again, this time with the knowledge of everything they'd walked through to reach this moment. It wasn't dizzying like the first kiss, it was deeper. Certain, later, she stood in the conservatory alone, her fingers tracing the edge of the key in her palm. Victor returned with her coat, holding it open for her. Come home with me, he said. She turned. I thought this was your home. He smiled faintly, the first real one she'd seen from him. It was until you walked in. Weeks passed, the gallery job faded behind her. Not because Victor asked her to leave it, but because an offer arrived from a mid-sized marketing firm that had seen the campaign concepts she'd submitted to Sterling and Branch. They wanted her to head a new creative division. She said yes. Victor didn't celebrate with champagne or flowers. He showed up outside her office one evening with takeout containers and a rooftop table set with fairy lights he'd strung himself. They ate noodles under the stars and talked about everything except work. One morning she woke to find him in the kitchen, barefoot, making pancakes and humming something off-key. She leaned against the doorframe, watching him flip a lopsided circle onto a plate. He looked up. Don't laugh. I'm not, she said. It's perfect. He crossed the room and kissed her forehead. You're perfect, she frowned. Don't say that. Why? Because I'm not, and I want you to love me when I'm not. He set down the plate and took her face in his hands. I already do. Everything after that moved fast. Not because they rushed it, but because they didn't need to wait. By spring, they stood in a sunlit courthouse surrounded by a handful of people. No headlines, no photographers, just her in a pale blue dress, him in a tailored suit, and the promise they'd both fought to believe in. When the judge pronounced them husband and wife, Kara didn't cry. But when Victor whispered, "You never dropped anything after that first day," she laughed through the tears she hadn't expected. Later that night, as they danced in the empty conservatory, Kara looked up at the man who had once knelt beside her on a lobby floor. You never told me what made you stop for me that day, she said. Victor brushed a strand of hair from her cheek. Because you didn't look up at me like I was someone important, he said. You looked up like you expected no one to help. And you did anyway, he nodded. And I always will. And in that moment, with the city lights flickering around them and the music echoing softly beneath the glass ceiling, Kara knew this wasn't a fairy tale, it was better, it was real, and it was finally hers. The last of the rain had just dried from the cobblestones outside the conservatory when Kara stepped through the arched doorway and exhaled. The space had changed since that first candle-lit dinner. Now, the glass walls shimmered with climbing jasmine vines, and soft golden lanterns hung from the ceiling, swaying gently with the breeze from the open windows. The scent of summer was everywhere: fresh soil, cut citrus, and a hint of lavender from the arrangements Victor had insisted on planting himself. She tugged off her heels and dropped them beside a wooden bench, walking barefoot into the center of the room. Her dress fluttered around her ankles as she moved to the piano tucked into the corner. It hadn't been played in weeks. She pressed one key, then another, letting the rich chords echo softly. "You always find the quiet places," Victor said from behind her. She turned, smiling as he stepped into view. He wore a dark button-down shirt with the sleeves rolled to his elbows, his watch catching the light. His hair was damp at the edges as if he'd just stepped out of the shower, and his eyes held the ease of someone who had finally stopped chasing something invisible. "I needed to breathe," Kara said, resting her hand on the piano's lid. "And this is the only place I can." He reached her in 3 steps, his hand sliding around her waist. "Then maybe we should stay here tonight." She tilted her head. "You mean sleep on the floor?" He grinned. "I meant I could have a bed delivered." "Of course you would." Kara leaned into him, her voice softer now. "Do you ever worry it's all too much?" "I used to," Victor said. "But not anymore. You're not afraid it'll fall apart?" "I don't build things that fall apart." She rested her head on his chest, listening to the steady rhythm of his heart. "I got a call today," she murmured, Victor's hand stilled on her back. "Good or bad?" "Good, really good. One of the brands I pitched took the concept. They want me to lead the entire rollout." He pulled back just enough to see her face. "You're kidding." "I'm not. They want a full campaign across 3 cities. Print, digital, everything." He touched her cheek, his expression shifting into something she hadn't seen before. Not pride, not admiration, but a quiet, reverent kind of awe. "You realize they'll be throwing offers at your feet after this," he said. "I don't want offers, I want freedom." "And this gives me that." Victor nodded slowly. "Then you take the lead, I'll follow." "You don't have to follow," she said. "Just don't block the path." He laughed, stepping back and spinning her once beneath the lanterns. "As if I ever could." Kara let herself be twirled, the hem of her dress catching the light. For a moment, it felt like they were suspended in time, 2 people who had stumbled into something rare and refused to let go. Later that week, she found herself standing beside him in a room she never thought she'd enter, the boardroom of Fairbanks Capital. She wore a fitted black jumpsuit with sharp lines and sleek heels, her hair swept into a low twist. Victor had invited her not as a guest, but as a partner. The board members were skeptical at first. Kara didn't miss the glances exchanged across the table. When she introduced herself as co-director of the creative collaboration, Victor had proposed a joint initiative between Fairbanks Capital and her new firm to rebrand a failing luxury startup. But when she began outlining her vision, market trends, emotional branding, consumer loyalty, every eye shifted. The murmurs stopped. And when she finished, one of the older executives, a man who had once dismissed her as a novelty, leaned forward and asked for her timeline. After the meeting, Victor pulled her aside into his office, closing the door behind them. "You were extraordinary," he said. "I was prepared. You were more than that." Kara crossed her arms, watching him. "You're not going to get used to this, are you?" "What, me being in the room?" "Having my own voice." He walked to her slowly, his gaze steady. "I don't want to get used to it, I want to keep being surprised." She reached up and loosened his tie. "You've surprised me too." "Have I? You've stopped trying to protect me." Victor's arms slipped around her waist. "That's because I finally understood loving you means trusting you to stand on your own. And I've never loved anyone the way I love you." The words landed between them with the weight of something final. Kara looked up at him, her chest tightening in the best way. "Say that again." "I love you," he said, slower this time. "With every part of me that used to be locked away. I love you when you argue, I love you when you win." I love you when you walk into a room and change the way it breathes. She kissed him before he could say more, her hands sliding into his hair. That night they returned to the conservatory. But this time there was no dinner, no piano music, no candlelight. There was just the sound of the city in the distance and the quiet certainty between them. Kara set her bag beside the bench where she'd once left her shoes and reached into it, pulling out a small black envelope. Victor raised an eyebrow. "What's this?" "Something I've been working on in secret." He opened it slowly, pulling out a single card. It was a design, a logo, minimalist and bold. 2 letters entwined at the center, K and V. He looked up. "Is this what I think it is?" "A joint venture," she said. "Creative consultancy. My firm and your capital, we pick the clients, we choose the projects, we don't answer to anyone." Victor turned the card over. On the back, her handwriting read, "Built from the ground up, together." He stepped closer, his voice low. "You're serious," she nodded. "We've talked about it. Now I'm giving us the blueprint." Victor pulled her into his arms and kissed her like he'd waited his whole life for this moment, and maybe he had. 2 months later, they launched KV & Co. The first campaign went viral within 72 hours. Interviews followed. Awards. But neither of them chased the spotlight. They chased stories that needed telling and ideas that needed champions. 1 year after their wedding, they returned to the conservatory, now theirs permanently, not just a space, but a symbol. Kara wore a dress the color of moonlight. Victor brought her a single peony from the garden they'd planted on the rooftop of their office building. They didn't renew their vows. They didn't need to. But they danced anyway, just the 2 of them. Later that evening, as they lay on a blanket beneath the open ceiling, Kara turned toward him. "Do you think we'll always be this lucky?" Victor looked at her, his voice steady. "We're not lucky, Kara. We chose this. Every day, every risk, every scar." She smiled, resting her head on his chest. "Then I choose you again." He kissed her hair. "And I'll keep choosing you. In every room, every city, every life we build." Outside, the jasmine vines rustled in the wind. And inside, wrapped in warmth, laughter, and the quiet strength of love earned not given, Kara and Victor held each other like the world had finally caught up with the truth they'd known from the beginning. They hadn't just fallen in love, they had built it. And it was unshakable.